Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
Please welcome to the stage, Melanie Belcher.
Right. That definitely hyped me up more than I hype myself up. So today I am super passionate about this topic, and I've loved hearing so many of you weaving it into your presentations and into the dialogue today. So I first wanted to share a story. A couple years ago, was sitting in my parked car in the outlet parking lot with my son. We had just done some back to school shopping, and I got a phone call. And it was a recruiter that I'd been working with for a couple of years. For like a month, not a couple of years. That would be a bad recruiter. We were talking, and she let me know the good news that the job requirements that I was looking for in this new position, that I had all the qualifications, that I was going to be getting the offer, and that the things that I had negotiated for the offer had been agreed on, and it was like a done deal. So I hung up the phone, and a couple things happened. First of all, my son looked at me and he was like, "Mom, you sounded so professional." I was like, "Yes." And the second thing was we kind of celebrated a little, and then instantly the voice in my head started saying, "What are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. Sales, you're a pharmacist. Why did you think you could do this? They're going to find you out." And instantly, I just had this pit in my stomach, like, oh my gosh, I'm a fraud. I just know how to interview really well. I don't know what I'm doing here. And they're going to wonder what on earth they've done making the decision to hire me. So the things I want to talk about today go along with this. Hopefully it's relatable. I think it probably is, because imposter syndrome is actually more prevalent than you realize. A lot of people experience this. So first, we're going to do a quick overview on what imposter syndrome or phenomenon is. We'll talk about some of the common triggers, and then we'll look at some of the strategies. We'll spend most of our time here on how to overcome these feelings of imposterism. So back in the 1970s, Pauline Chance and Suzanne Imes conducted a study among high-achieving women. And what they found was that these high-achieving women, creating a lot of success for themselves, often felt like frauds, felt like they were incompetent or not intelligent. And that's where this term imposter phenomenon came from. It's technically not a syndrome because it's not a diagnosable illness or anything, but it's a common set of occurrences that can happen when someone feels like an imposter. I have some water here because I'm getting over a cold. So again, this is identified by feelings of inadequacy, lack of intelligence. Maybe all of your good fortune was just dumb luck. Does happen in up to 82% of people at one point in their lifetime. So we're not alone. There's plenty of good company here. And then something else is that it's common in women and minorities who maybe historically have had systems in place where maybe we weren't accepted into, the boardrooms. We weren't accepted into different types of areas of expertise. And then also, and this is something I think that we've talked about today as well, depression, anxiety. These are results of uncontrolled imposter syndrome. So I am not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. So what I'm sharing here is not medical advice. But I will say, if you are experiencing imposter syndrome and it is leading to that depression and anxiety, best thing to do is get a professional help. I'm going to give you guys a minute to read. So these are some statements from very famous and amazing people. Justice Sonia Sotomayor from the Supreme Court, Tom Hanks, an Academy Award-winning actor, Maya Angelou, like Nobel laureate, they've all felt like imposters at some point in their life, which I think is just startling because we see them as these huge successes, as these amazing people, contributors to society, which they are. But internally, they feel like some big phony. So I think keeping that in mind, we are all in good company. Like these are some examples of other high profile business people, athletes, comedians, like songwriters, actors, who have all felt like they've been some kind of fraud and have shared that verbally at some point. Even a genius like Albert Einstein up there, like he felt like he was some sort of imposter. So let's talk through some of the triggers, which I think is so interesting and ironic because they're such positive things. It's the promotion, it's the, leading a project at work, it's public speaking, it's entering a traditionally male-dominated field where this can sometimes trigger those feelings of, do I really fit here? Am I worthy of being here? And can trigger those feelings that sometimes people experience. So I'll share the one particular around entering the male-dominated field. So just last week, I had to take my kids to the dentist, and through a series of events, it ended up we were seeing the other dentist in the office who I hadn't met before. And it was Dr. So-and-so, I'm not going to say, but it was a female. And it was so fun getting to talk with her and hear some of her perspectives, because one thing she shared is that there's only 2% female dentists in Utah. Only 2% females dentists in Utah. And she said that when the University of Utah opened their dental school, she was like the first class. She didn't have any upperclassmen to look at and think, how did you do this as a woman? Like, how do you balance it all? But time and time again, she has felt like an imposter. I talked to her about this talk that I was going to be giving today, and she's like, oh my gosh, I have that so bad. And, to no one's fault, like this is sometimes the systems and biases that we have grown up in, and how women maybe have been perceived in different fields and areas of expertise. So we're going to talk about the strategies here. Again, not medical advice, but these strategies do come from the American Psychological Association, and I thought that they were phenomenal. I want to share them with you today, share some of my personal experiences, and hopefully give you a couple ideas on things that you can use in your life if you ever have these feelings pop up, because it's not one and done. Like, it could be you get a promotion. It could be suddenly you're president of the PTA. It could be you're getting some award for something. It's going to pop up throughout your career, throughout your life. So figuring out some tools and strategies to use now will help you when they do inevitably pop up again. So the 7 strategies, there's a lot. 7, I try to keep things in 3s, but this is a lot. So first is learn the facts. Second is share your feelings. Celebrate those successes. Let go of perfectionism. Cultivate self-compassion. Share your failures. and accept it. And I think several of our speakers again today have touched on some of these items, like the perfectionism, the failures, we're not our failures, things like that. So learning the facts. So the first story I want to share is when I'm talking about learning the facts, I'm talking about don't focus on the one thing happening right then and there that has triggered that imposter feeling. So the promotion, whatever it is. Take a step back and look at the whole continuum of your progress, right? It's the progression. And that can help you really put things in perspective. So recently, my family has really gotten into watching this nature show with Birdie Gregory. He's like this adventurer, like filmmaker, photographer that goes all over the world and films different animals and studies different aspects of animals. Oh, maybe someone's seen it. So he went to the Antarctic to study fin whales because fin whales used to be commercially hunted back in the 70s or 80s. I should fact check that. And were used to make soap and all sorts of things. And they were on the brink of extinction. So when he was there, he would hop in the water in the Antarctic with this video camera and try to find these fin whales. Well, when he was down in there, he could see, one or two, and was able to find an area where they were feeding. But it wasn't until he took the drone up, zoomed out, when he could see the full magnitude, the total of the whales that were in that feeding area, and could make some, scientific correlations around what they had found, like seeing that bigger picture, being able to appreciate that the I guess numbers, counts were going up, and that there was some healthy breeding and seeing these whales come back to resurgence. Anyway, that was a long story that I couldn't spit out. So again, I think zooming out and seeing the whole totality can help you put that thing in perspective and realize you're not the sum of one thing, you're the sum of many things. Someone also talked about this earlier, supportive language for yourself. So would I ever say to my friend, Melanie, what have you done? You have made a massive mistake. We would not say this to your friend. We would not talk that way. So I loved what you shared earlier about putting your name in and talking to yourself how you would a friend. Like, we beat ourselves up so much. We say the meanest things to ourselves. Like, I mean, you can insert anything you want right there because we know what our buttons are and we know what our insecurities are, and we thrive on that with our mental dialogue. So flipping that switch, changing it into that supportive narrative that you would share with a friend, you'd be loving and compassionate, turn that on yourself. So sharing feelings, someone also talked a little bit about this. So the interesting thing, well, let's talk about Michael Phelps for a minute. So Michael Phelps, many of you know, is like the most decorated Olympian of all time. An amazing swimmer from Baltimore, Maryland. He also struggled with severe depression and anxiety, so much so that he even contemplated suicide. He started to get help, and how he got help was through therapy, right? Therapy is amazing, and talking about his struggles. When you can appreciate what you're dealing with and can speak it, just like Mr. Rogers said, I almost used that quote, when you can name it and say it, that gives you so much more power over it. And the thing he loved about his sharing of his mental health journey was that it started the conversation. People are more open about talking about it, particularly men in that example. Like, men don't usually talk about mental health. He was willing to do that, put his face forward and share that struggle. But it gives you so much more power to identify how to overcome what you're dealing with and to share stories with each other and to have community around you. So with imposter syndrome, here's the hard thing. We don't want anyone to find out that we are the fraud that we think we are, right? So we don't want to share that with anybody. No one gets to know that we're really this big phony, working this job, getting this degree, whatever, leading this project. But I'm telling you that the more we talk about it, again, it loosens things up. It's not so scary. We're all human. We can be vulnerable with each other and gain power over it. Because imposterism can be very lonely if you keep that all into yourself. So leverage your network, find a mentor, find someone that you can talk to about your feelings, that you can, get some ideas. Maybe they can share that broader perspective with you. Like, what are you talking about? You're amazing at this, and can help you see things as they truly are. And that could be, verbally, it could be groups of, women, leadership summits. It could be social media groups, anywhere where you can find a supportive group of people to talk to. So successes, celebrate your successes. I just had a conversation with 2 of my team members last week. We have quarterly check-ins just to pause from the chaos of work, acknowledge the accomplishments in the last quarter, acknowledge what's gone well throughout the year, ideate about things we could do better, how I can be a better support to them. And 2 of my direct reports last week, I had to stop them and say, high achieving people often, as soon as they do the thing, are on to what do I need to do next and next and next and next. Let's just pause for a minute and look at what you did this last year and give yourself a pat on the back. Like, this was not an easy year. It was not an easy year, but you have done so much and have accomplished so much. So please take that moment, feel the pride, feel that sense of, pride is the only word that's coming to mind right now, but so pride, and just own that for a minute and really celebrate that success. Another thing I like to do is an Atta Girl folder. Don't know if any of you know what that is. So for me, it could be a physical folder or an electronic folder. I actually have both because back in the day, people would send actual letters or notes. And this is just a space where I keep kudos from team members or from my boss or even from my family, just little notes of encouragement and appreciation for some of the things you've done that you can reflect on if you're having a bad day. If you are having that bad day, you can go back and remember, I'm not a complete failure because I'm having a bad day or this project went south. Look at my career again in totality. Look at these things I've achieved. There's physical, evidence of your success in those folders, right? So that you can really celebrate your success. So perfectionism. So focusing on the progress, not the here and now. This is not a straight linear line of success. I don't know anyone who has that straight linear line. It's failure, trial and failure, bumpy, bumpy, bump. But just look at that trend and see, you are on the path. You've made it. You're getting there. You're not the sum of the divot there. You're the sum of the whole. So that trajectory of that line graph. Failure and exposure. Okay, so this, someone mentioned vulnerability earlier. And when I think of vulnerability, I think of Brené Brown, who is my rock star. In her book, Rising Strong, she told a story that I'm going to share with you all because I thought it was amazing. She had a colleague or friend named Andrew, and he was a senior leader at an advertising agency. And they received this request for a bid for this big client, big company that really could be great for their ad agency. And everyone in the office was buzzing about the excitement of this potential opportunity, what they could do to position themselves in a way to get that business. And in the back of Andrew's mind, he kind of had this nagging thought because he knew some of the reputation of this client, this potential client, that they often were rude and dismissive and maybe not a good partner. But everyone was excited in the office, and he was like, yep, we can do this bid. Let's do this bid. So for the next 2 months, everybody worked nonstop, long hours, sacrificed time with family and friends to get their bid ready. And they were invited to go to the client on site and pitch their bid. They were selected as one of the finalists. So they went to the client and were giving their presentation. And many of the people in the room were on their laptops, clicking away, not looking at the presenters. And people, Andrew and team were starting to feel like, are they even listening to us? Maybe they're typing notes, I don't know. But then the potential clients started asking questions that they had already addressed in the presentation. So they were totally checked out, hadn't been paying attention. And then another person from the prospect made a rude comment about one of the presenters. And at the end, they finished up their meeting, wrapped the meeting. Nobody said anything about the rude comment. Andrew didn't say anything about the comment. And he felt like, I'm a screw up. Like everyone left that meeting feeling like a failure. But Andrew definitely internalized this because he was their leader. And they trusted him. They trusted his judgment. So all night, Andrew was plagued with that feeling, that narrative. I'm a screw up. I let my team down. They're not going to trust me again. And he recognized what that was. So that was shame. So again, Brene Brown, amazing TED Talk, 2010, shame and vulnerability. So he recognized it as shame. And next day called one of his friends who was also familiar with Brene Brown's work. And he shared what had happened. And his friend said, I get what you're going through, and you may have screwed up, but how you make hundreds of decisions in a day. Can you give yourself grace that maybe you got one wrong? And Andrew was like, there's no mistakes. But then when the friend asked Andrew, well, what if one of your employees made a similar mistake? That's when Andrew realized that he would have said that's part of the process. It's not perfectionism. Mistakes are part of the process. So he realized he needed to go back to his team and make things right. I won't go, but I guess I can. He shared with his team, that he had known about this client and that, they could do the bid, but he wanted to ask their opinions, should they do the bid? And he apologized for not having, talked this through initially. At the end of the day, they ended up saying, no, we don't want to do this. We don't want to partner with this client, and all was well. But the main thing was for Andrew, he loosened up that perfectionism and showed his vulnerability and further gained trust and respect again with his peers. The one bad decision of the hundreds of that day were not him. They were not, him. Last thing here is don't be a hero. We all want to be the hero, like the Encanto, right? We want to be the superhero. People who suffer from imposter syndrome often do feel like they need to step in and show that they know, how to fix it, or that they know how to solve the solution. We don't have to do that. We can say, you know what? I'll have to take that question back. I don't know. It's okay to say that you don't know. Right? Cultivate self-compassion, mindfulness. So the feelings of imposter syndrome or phenomenon are mindless. They're just like that fight or flight brain kicking in. When you pull yourself back to mindfulness, then you can start to see things as they truly are. That you are not your achievements, you are not your salary, you are not your title or status. Everyone has intrinsic value. Like our logical brain knows this, But in those imposter syndrome moments, pause, take a step back, ground yourself, remind yourself again of these core things that we inherently know and can help move you through that feeling. Community over competition. So I mentioned earlier the study that even discovered imposter phenomenon. Well, back then, there wasn't such thing as like systemic bias. There wasn't like institutions that, they didn't study institutions that maybe discouraged or marginalized certain groups like women and minorities. So a thing to consider here is when a rising tide lifts all boats. I think with women especially, the thought that there's one seat at the table has driven this rivalry with women. And it does not need to be that way. Like if we can link arms together and champion each other, like I want to have an advocate in the room when I'm not there at work who can say, Melanie did this thing and kicked butt. And I want to do that for my team. All the women on my team, so-and-so did this project and this is the result. If we can champion each other, again, we will lift everybody and help us move through some of these biases that exist in our world today because it's an imperfect world. Share your failures. Okay, again, imposters do not want to do this ever at all. I think with social media, it's definitely become more overt in us seeing what I guess, well, with social media, it's more overt, right? Because you'll see the very best of someone posted online. I think initially maybe people didn't have that context. Now people definitely do. We realized that that is the snapshot of someone's life that was amazing for like however long it took to take the picture. And maybe in the background, you know, kids were like fighting and someone broke a dish in the kitchen. I mean, I don't know. Like life is imperfect. So don't compare your very worst with someone else's very best, because that is not a fair comparison. And you need to give yourself some slack when looking at accomplishments of others, your failures. It's not an equal vantage. So learning and growth, this will be good for my real estate friends that I've met today. And I may not say her last name right, but Barbara Cochran, who's one of the women on Shark Tank. Maybe you guys have watched that. So huge, like real estate mogul, worth 100 million, like net. Barbara, that's Barbara, amazing businesswoman. So when she was early on in her real estate days, she focused on real estate in New York City, and there were lots of apartments, of course, in New York City that people wanted to look and vet out and decide if they wanted to get it or not. So she had this brilliant idea to videotape all of the apartments, you know, under her book. And people could like check out the videotapes and not have to go to the apartment to view it. Well, even though she thought it was an amazing idea, it was an absolute flop. Nobody checked out the videotapes. She had hundreds and hundreds of videotapes that no one ever touched. Well, one night, her husband came home, and he worked with like the Navy or military, and they'd been working a lot with the World Wide Web, which was like new back then. And he explained kind of the concept of the World Wide Web to her, and a light bulb went on in her head. And she was like, I've got to put these out there for people to see. Like they've got to be able to see this. So she posted those videos online and was able to start getting into the internet early and have that edge on her competition, which really helped her jettison her career in a positive way. So in her TED Talk, she talked about every failure, knowing that it was like a turning point for her because she was going to make that into a success in one way, shape, or form. hey, last, accept it. Accept it. It's here. It's going to keep coming. We've got to make friends with imposter syndrome because, resistance to this kind of stuff generally just makes it worse. So if you can work through some of these strategies here and now with something that you encounter in the future, then you'll again be able to recognize it and name it next time you feel it and know the strategies to help you work through it. So again, that recognition is key. Okay, well, we breezed through that. Key takeaways, I think today, again, imposter syndrome or phenomenon is a thing. It's a thing. And more often than not, people have experienced it. So don't think you're alone in having had those feelings. Secondly, successes can trigger this. It's not just if something went wrong. It's not just a failure thing. It can also be some of these big successes that you have in your life. And then also, there's strategies that you can use to overcome, to get through, to push past, and pull yourself up from some of those feelings that definitely drag you down if you don't.
Hey, my friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.